Ramin, thank you for being with us tonight. Terribly sorry for your loss.
Thank you, Daryl, for having me. And yes, it's been a huge shock. I think you can try to imagine what I and the family are going through. We're hoping that the push from the UK government would somehow alter the Iranian regime's decision on this terrible sentence. But unfortunately, we didn't have the end that we were hoping for.
How are you processing this news this weekend?
Since Tuesday evening, when I got the news publicly, I've been in shock. The colleagues here know that when I would have a conversation with them and would have a work meeting, and then an hour or 2 hours later, we would go for continuing that conversation. I could not recall what we had already discussed. That's the state that my mind was at on Wednesday and Thursday following receiving the news. And I received the shocking news of the execution yesterday morning. And again, I tried to hold on. I tried to talk to the media and try to spread the word of what the Iranian regime has done. But it is difficult.
And have you spoken this weekend to your auntie, to other members of the family? How are the rest of the family processing this?
I have managed to have a conversation with my parents who are still back in the country. They were trying to cope, and they had the conversation with the extended family and my aunt, and they're not in a good shape, understandably. It is difficult. I think this is not something that any family should be should be experiencing, should be pushed to go through this. It's a violation of human rights. Uh, this is not the today's norms of international affairs and governing. This is against the UN Human Rights Charter and what the regime has done.
And you've drawn links, haven't you, directly to the UK's the plans to designate the Iran's powerful IRGC as a terrorist organisation. You feel that there is a direct link between that and this execution?
I don't think that the timing is accidental. It was very recently that the UK government publicly announced the bill for designation of IRGC as a terrorist organization. And my uncle has been imprisoned for a few years. Now, pushing the sentence forward in a hasty manner to a few days and then asking his family for the last visit during this period of time that the UK government has made the decision, bringing forward the sentence of executing a British national is not accidental.
What do you make of Iran's accusation, the allegations that your uncle was spying for MI6?
I don't think that is true. In my opinion, it's a fabrication. It's a plot against him. Again, looking at the internal affairs of the country currently and what the country is going on in terms of its international affairs, the timing is interesting. But on the other hand, he was not a character that would try to do anything to jeopardize the population and the regime itself. It doesn't hold. I think it's been a political game inside the country, the various factions in the paramilitary IRGC and the various political parts within the regime at the highest levels, along the internal affairs in terms of the protests going on inside the country for the past few months, as well as the Iran's will and interest for lifting of the sanctions brought by the nuclear program that the country has. Alongside that, we have the recent announcement of the British government for enlisting the RJC as a terrorist organization. So I think if you look at the picture at a broad view, along the understanding of mine from my uncle as somebody that was devoted and had the best interest of the country and the regime, I think that the accusation doesn't hold.
We've been hearing as well from Amnesty International this weekend, who have been encouraging the UK government to investigate claims that your uncle himself made that he had been tortured in recent days and weeks. Do you get the sense that that is possible, that is true? And would you like to see an investigation? Would you like to see that carried out?
I've previously campaigned with Amnesty International, and I appreciate what Amnesty International does, and I think it's a welcome decision. On the other hand, looking at the track record of the Iranian regime in terms of investigations for its human rights violations, I'm not very optimistic that Amnesty International nor the British government will have access to individuals that were involved with this case, nor the documents for bringing an investigation forward. We've had previous instances of the United Nations designating officials to investigate Iran's human rights violations, but most often they didn't have access to the documents and officials to carry out their investigation. So I really hope Amnesty International will be successful in its mission, but I'm not very optimistic.
Okay. What we have seen in response from the Foreign Office, from James Cleverly and from the Prime Minister, is the introduction of new sanctions, fresh sanctions this weekend. Ramin, if you could speak to the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, tonight, how would you assess his handling of this situation, and what would you advise him from here?
The Foreign Secretary and the Foreign Office were trying to alter the Iranian regime's decision before the case became public this week. And since the case became public, the Foreign Secretary himself and the Prime Minister went public with very strong statements. I think that was a very, very good and encouraging sign. We were hoping that those moves would alter Iran's decision for conducting the executions, and this unfortunately wasn't successful. That goes back partly also to Iran's policy of not recognizing dual nationality when it doesn't suit it. The Iranian regime recognizes dual nationality as what is now become to be understood as hostage diplomacy. So they take dual nationals hostage in order to achieve what they're looking for in the international arena. But when it comes to sentencing them with most often fabricated cases, they only recognize the Iranian side of nationality. So the British government did what possible, I think. But what comes from this point forward now that the unfortunate execution has occurred, I think what matters is now for the British government and the Foreign Secretary to push on with their decision on pressing Iran in terms of the IRGC and as well as Iran's nuclear program. And also we should at the same time forget other dual nationals that are currently imprisoned, British dual nationals that are currently imprisoned in Iran, as well as the wide protests are going on in the country. The population is raising its voice, and I think it is important for the British government to recognize that in any way possible.
There is an argument, isn't there, Ramin, that an escalation of those sanctions, or indeed categorising the IRGC as a terrorist organisation, risks playing into the hands of the Iranian regime's recent narrative that it's created in sort of painting the West as being as having a hand in the recent unrest in the country, the sort of us and them that they have created in their version of events. What do you make of that? We heard yesterday from Jack Straw, the former Foreign Secretary, who was saying that actually to not rush into further sanctions or an escalation here may, as frustrating as it may be the best course of events.
I don't think that the British government is rushing into the decision. I think that decision should have been made some time ago. And it was unfortunate that the British government did not make the decision earlier. But nonetheless, I think it is a very welcome decision to go ahead with that designation now. We had the U.S. government designating IRGC some years ago during the Trump administration, The discussion of designating IRGC to some extent has been going on in the UK for a very long time. IRGC, as you may know, has sections within it. For instance, the Quds force, which is responsible for foreign operations, has been designated by various countries as a terrorist organization. But designating the wider IRGC as a terrorist organization, I think it is important and necessary. Why do we sanction governments, hostile governments and their institutions? We do that in order to prevent a war. That is the last resort before going for an all-out war, which nobody is looking for. So this is the outcome of the Iranian regime's decision over the years. Hostile decisions, hostile policies toward foreign states. And this is important for the British government to go ahead with this decision. And we in parallel have the similar discussion going on within the European Union. I think European Union also needs to go ahead with this approach to try to isolate the IRGC and try to reduce its capacity for creating havoc across Europe and the Middle East.
Do you have any sympathy or time for that argument, though, that it plays into the Iranian regime's narrative, that it strengthens them potentially?
They do in terms of their propaganda. I understand that, but the Iranian uprising in the past few months has nothing to do with international interference in any shape or form. People are fed up. And this is nothing new. We have had episodes of protests in the country during the existence of the Iranian regime. But this round is quite different because the population has had it. They tried the made up elections inside the country to try to have a peaceful approach. In order to alter the regime's behavior inside the country. And nonetheless, the protests are peaceful at the moment. I think that is also important to note. But this is an outcome of the Iranian population's decision to bring this protest forward. I don't think that British government's decision for designating IRGC has anything to do with the Iranian protests. Obviously, the Iranian regime will and has use this decision as a propaganda.
What was your uncle like, Ramin?
He was an open guy. He was a smiling person all the time. I only have fond memories of him. He would visit us. We lived in different towns. He used to live in the capital, and we were in the south of the country. But nonetheless, considering his busy schedule of his work and international travels, he would try and he would do his best to visit us in our town, at least during the Iranian New Year in March. I only have good memories from him. He would try to help the family, his friends, in any capacity that he could potentially do. He would at least try to take his time and have a conversation with them when they were in a difficult situation. So that will be the memory that I will hold from him, and I think that will be a similar memory for the wider family and his friends.
You've dedicated your life, Ramin, as you say, to the pursuit of human rights, to campaigning for what you believe to be right. This is also a personal tragedy for you and for your family. Does this moment strengthen your resolve or risk dampening it?
It has strengthened it. I have no intention of altering my decision, my life approach because of this unfortunate tragedy. I made my decision years ago in order to do all I can to improve human life in any capacity that I could. And I think this unfortunate outcome not only has strengthened it, but also it has made my focus more clear on my life's decision.